Many of you who watch my videos will know that I am a huge Nintendo fan, and one of my favorite consoles that Nintendo has ever created is the Nintendo Wii. Not only did this console revolutionize the video game industry with its revolutionary controller and make video games accessible to casual audiences, but it also had a huge library of games, though whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to interpretation. With the release of the Wii U, it's time to say goodbye to the Wii, and what better way to do that than to look back on the fantastic games that this console gave us. Now, this list is going to be split into two parts. In this video, I will be looking at the best first-party Wii titles, and in the next video, I'll be looking at the best third-party Wii titles. Now, say what you want about the Nintendo Wii, but it had one hell of a great first-party lineup. Many of the best games in their respective franchises were made on the system, and all franchises got the spotlight once again, despite missing a few key entries. Now, in most cases, I would say only one game per franchise, but in this case, I'm going to ignore it, since the number of first-party Wii titles is rather limited. Also, please remember that I have not played every first-party game on the Wii, so if you're wondering why some of them aren't there, that's probably the reason why. Also, and as upsetting as this is, I have not played Xenoblade Chronicles. So with that said, let's get started! I think it's safe to say that when the Wii was first launched, the majority of games did not know how to use the Wii Remote effectively, but rather slapped it on as nothing more than a gimmick. This was especially apparent with minigame collection, as they slapped the Wii Remote on the game without properly thinking and integrating it well. This is except for one. Well, you can always count on Nintendo to know how to make the best out of their hardware. WarioWare Smooth Moves is a compilation of minigames that fully take advantage of what the Wii Remote's motion capabilities can do, and each game is fun to play with various different scenarios, even ones from other Nintendo games. The game also has a lot of humour to it, and the boss battles especially take full advantage of the Wii Remote's capabilities, my personal favourite being the Star Fox level recreations. The Wii may have had a lot of bad minigame compilations through its library, but WarioWare Smooth Moves is one of the compilations that's easily worth your time. The one thing I really loved about the Wii's Virtual Console was that you were able to download games that were originally for Japan-only releases. This gave gamers a chance to experience loads of new games they've probably never even heard of before. And the first game to be released on the Virtual Console, outside of Japan, was Sinan Punch on the N64. And it was a pretty good game that got a lot of fan support behind it. But I honestly did not expect them to make a sequel to said game. Because of the large increase of popularity thanks to the Virtual Console, Sinan Punishment got a sequel, and it was one hell of a good time. Sinan Punishment's star success was a truly hardcore on-rail shooting game. The action is constant and frantic, and you'll always be on your toes. The bosses are huge, challenging, and truly epic, and the game has various bosses in one stage. The game is also insanely hard, and it will beat you down and make you come back for more. One of the biggest complaints about the first Sinan Punishment was that the controls were rather awkward and confusing. Well, luckily the sequel makes aiming and moving much easier and much more streamlined, resulting in a much more fast-paced and frantic experience. The only downside to this game is that it's pretty short, being arcade style, and that there are only online leaderboards instead of online play. But still, this is an on-rail shooting game that demands the player be good enough, or just simply bite the dust. After the success of New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, it was only natural that Nintendo would make a sequel in the form of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Like all Mario games, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is what you come to expect from the Mario series. Great level design, catchy music, power-ups, and boss battles. And New Super Mario Bros. Wii delivers on all those levels, especially with the new power-ups like the Propeller Mushroom and the Penguin Suit. New Super Mario Bros. Wii was also the first Mario game to include multiplayer. Now you and 3 other people could run, jump, and stomp your way through the Mushroom Kingdom, which always led to a good time, even if things did get rather crazy and out of hand. I also liked how this game was a lot harder and more challenging than the previous game, which I think we can all agree was a complete and total cakewalk. It's how the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And New Super Mario Bros. Wii is just that, providing players with traditional Mario goodness, but now with 4 players to share the fun. Though I am starting to get fed up of seeing the series being recycled and put out on a regular basis. I'm not gonna lie here, I honestly thought Nintendo wouldn't do something like this, since their previous 3D Mario games were only one per system. Based on how different and big Super Mario Galaxy was, I didn't expect to see another new 3D Mario game for quite some time. But lo and behold, we got Super Mario Galaxy 2, a game that in my opinion was what the first Mario Galaxy should have been. Now people have often complained this game is nothing more than the same game with new levels and could essentially be called DLC. And while I can see where people are coming from, I honestly think that this game is much better as a standalone title. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is more than just new levels though. The addition of Yoshi really helped add more meat to the game, and using his unique abilities and gameplay style was a joy each and every time. The new power-ups like the Boulder and Cloud Suit were a great addition to Mario's arsenal, especially the Cloud Suit. The game also had some of the best levels in Mario games to date, being both new levels and recreations. While people may have been annoyed that this game was very similar to the first one, I still think the new levels, power-ups and addition of Yoshi was enough to give this game the number 7 spot. Nintendo has a history of having very strong launch titles for its systems. I mean, we got Super Mario World on the Super NES, Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64, and Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. And on the Wii we got another great launch title, only this time it wasn't Mario, Pokemon, or Donkey Kong game. It was a Zelda game. Oh man, I cannot tell you how much hype there was leading up to this game. I mean, there was a huge amount of hype for the game when it was just going to be released for the GameCube, and hearing that it would be on the Wii with added motion controls, I was completely sold. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is one of the more darker and unique Zelda games to date, not to mention one of the biggest. The addition of playing as Wolf Link didn't feel tacked on gimmick and was surprisingly fun gameplay style. The game also has probably the best sidekick, Midna, who could not only help you with obstacles and enemies, but was the most fun character and had an interesting story. The motion controls of the Wii Remote really helped to enhance the experience of the sword combat and aiming, and the Wii Remote made enemy encounters and boss fights all the more fun. The game also has up to 9 kick-ass dungeons and a huge amount of side quests to fulfill. Twilight Princess was a game that had a huge amount of hype, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. Oh my god! This has got to be the most love-hate game in existence! Many people have split feelings towards Metroid Other M. Some, like myself, love the game for its unique gameplay style of 3D exploration and first-person perspective, the epic boss fights, and the fact that this game gives Samus more character and backstory. Others, however, hate this game for being way too linear, taking away Samus's badassery, and some poor design choices. And yes, while I can certainly see why people may be turned away from this game or just dislike it in general, I still feel that the game is very underrated. Being a hardcore Metroid fan, I've grown accustomed to what this series has to offer and what defines it. And this game introduced various elements that were otherwise alien to the Metroid universe, which a lot of people didn't like, but for me, most of the changes were for the better. Again, most of them. I found the use of 3D perspective and 2D first-person perspective to be a very innovative concept that I would like to be done more, as I felt it had a lot of potential and honestly thought that it helped to improve the experience. The game also had a slew of great boss battles, and the difficulty really gave the players a challenge, but isn't in any way cheap, which felt all the more rewarding once you clear the area. The game also is one of the best Metroid games to speedrun thanks to its more streamlined and linear structure. And say what you want, but I really got into Samus' backstory and enjoyed finding out more about Samus as a character. However, the game is not perfect, as I feel the way you obtain weapons and upgrades in this game was completely stupid, and the soundtrack is pretty damn poor, which is sad considering most if not all Metroid games have great soundtracks. And though using the Wii Remote on its side worked, using the nunchuck would have been so much better. At times the Wii Remote felt a bit awkward. In the end, Metroid Other M is truly a love or hate game, which I just happen to love so much that it's one of my top 5 Metroid games, and personally, I don't think this game gets enough praise. With the Metroid Prime series out of the way, Retro Studios decided to take a crack at another one of Nintendo's franchises, this time the Big Ape himself. Donkey Kong Country Returns is not only one of the best games on the Nintendo Wii, it's also probably the best Donkey Kong game released since Donkey Kong 64. DKC Returns was a return to form for the Big Ape. Going back to his classic 2D roots, Donkey Kong Country Returns reminded people why Donkey Kong is such a popular character. The game has some of the best level design in recent history, with lots of variety, great set pieces and exploration to find secrets and shortcuts. The boss battles were what we come to expect from this series, and playing both by yourself and with a friend is a huge amount of fun. Another staple of the series that remained intact is the difficulty, and oh boy, DKC does not let up. The game is constantly testing your abilities, and your jumps and timing have to be just right or you're not getting anywhere anytime soon. What's good about this though is that the game is challenging, but it's fair. The feeling of satisfaction you get from beating each level is immense, and nothing in this game comes off as cheap, though I'm not a fan of the barrel blasting stages. Donkey Kong may have been out of the game for a while, but it was great to see him back in action. And because of this in the Metroid Prime series, I want Retro to tackle another one of Nintendo's franchises. Star Fox, maybe? After seeing the very first trailer for this game, I had to get myself a Wii. That's right folks, Nintendo's all-star fighting game Super Smash Bros. Made its way to Nintendo Wii, and it's my favourite one in the series. Only by a little though. Super Smash Bros. Brawl was a game I could not wait to get. After playing Mew for years upon years, I couldn't wait to see what they could do to the series in terms of improving it and adding new things into the game. And for the most part, most of the additions were really good. Again, for the most part. Super Smash Bros. Brawl has my favourite roster of Smash Bros. Characters in the series, with some of my personal favourites being Meta Knight Wolf and Sonic the Hedgehog. I think this game is the most balanced in the series, and the addition of the Smash Bros. Is one of the best additions I've seen recently. The game also has some awesome boss fights and hundreds upon hundreds of trophies and stickers to collect, as well as online play. Yeah, well, you see, even though the idea of online play was great, the execution wasn't so much. With all the lag and limited options, also the single player was in my opinion a step back from Melee in terms of both enjoyment and diversity. I mean sure, Brawl had more options, but the event matches were rather boring. Classic and All-Star had the exact same structure with little to no changes every playthrough, which got really repetitive. And even though I do like Subspace Emissary, and I have played through it a few times, even I have to admit it seems like a missed opportunity. Despite all these gripes though, Super Smash Bros. Brawl is an awesome fighting game, and I can't wait to see the next installment on the Wii U and 3DS. Here's hoping for Ridley. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption showed the world how a first-person shooter can be done on the Wii and how to do first-person controls right, because it controlled just beautifully. It was smooth, responsive, and made precise aiming a walk in the park. So how do you top that? You give the first games the same treatment. Good lord, this is what you call a bargain. After seeing how well Metroid Prime 3 benefited from the motion controls, they decided to give the other games the same treatment. And oh boy did it turn out for the better. Both Metroid Prime 1 and 2, two already fantastic games, were upgraded with the Wii's Wii Remote controls, and let us gamers experience these in a brand new way. The Metroid Prime series has been one of the best trilogies in video game history. Not only did it bring the Metroid series into 3D flawlessly, but as games they're just incredible. They've got the stunning graphics, outstanding level design, amazing soundtracks, huge amounts of exploration, awesome boss fights and memorable set pieces, as well as of course the beautiful controls. It was thanks to Metroid Prime series that I am now a huge Metroid fan. I have no regrets in the slightest, and after seeing the ending to Metroid Prime 3, I am hoping for Metroid Prime 4. Please Retro, do it! When The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was released, it was met with universal acclaim and won Game of the Year various times, and has even been called the greatest game of all time, and many people thought no other Zelda game would ever top it. Well, they were wrong. I think The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is a better game than Ocarina of Time, though admittedly, not by much. Skyward Sword has got to be one of the best games released in the past decade. I mean, the game is just incredible. I mean, not only did this game integrate motion controls into the gameplay incredibly well, but also adds to the experience, it has some of the best dungeons and bosses in Zelda game history. The game also has one of the best stories in a Zelda game, and I really like Skyward Sword's structure and layout of the maps, so they felt like mini dungeons while exploring the world, both adding to the experience. The only thing that hurts this game, to be honest, is the fact that the side quests are rather lackluster, and I'm not too fond of flying around the world map, and it isn't very fun, especially compared to other Zelda games. Despite these negatives, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword was the perfect game to send off the Wii, and it's the best game on the Nintendo Wii. But it's not my favorite Zelda game.